Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Asani. Good to see each and every one of you here this morning. We are in a series. We're talking about why we cheat. And I'm going to give you a phenomenal foundation that will go into some things. But today, our topic is I cheated on you because of me. Now, if you remember, we quickly went over this, understanding the why of why we do what we do. There are several factors. There are personal factors, there are relational factors, and yes, there are social factors. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some of the personal factors because oftentimes we hear people say, you know what, babe, it wasn't you, it was me. And it sounds like a cop out and it sounds like an excuse and something cute to say, but there may be a level of truth to that statement. Not maybe, certainly is. And so, having these conversations, oftentimes when we begin to unpack the reasons, many people associate what we're saying as excuses. I was reading some of the comments even from yesterday's show, and people would be like, "You and your excuses, boy, bye." And what happens is people reduce behaviors of infidelity down to one thing: selfishness. They're just being selfish. They're just thinking about themselves. And there's a level of truth to that. It is a very selfish, self-centered, thinking about myself behavior. But it's important that we go deeper, because if we just limit it to selfishness, then how do we solve that? And if we did solve that and didn't deal with deeper issues, then the behavior can persist forever. I wanted to read a definition explaining the difference between an excuse and a legitimate reason. Okay? An excuse, by definition, is often seen as a way to avoid responsibility or to rationalize why something didn't happen as planned, often without strong justification. Okay? So many people do give excuses where they do not take personal ownership and responsibility for what was done. A legitimate reason, however, is a valid, factual explanation that provides credible and justifiable basis for why something could not be done or why something happened a certain type of way. So an excuse tends to lack substance and can be perceived as a way to deflect blame, while a legitimate reason is based upon real, sometimes avoidable or unavoidable consequences. Or circumstances. And so I think it's important to differentiate the two, because the fact of the matter is, we're not giving excuses for why people do what they do. We're not even giving you justified reasons, because there's nothing justified in why people do what they do. But we do want to lay a foundation for what the possible influences or factors that contributed to the behavior may be. And so, to be honest, we don't have even enough to unpack it in this show, because there's 60 reasons, 60 factors. I want you to think about it like this. Think about the human body. There are probably a million different ways, or for a million different reasons, that the body can actually decline and lead to one's death. Would you agree? There's an incalculable list. Likewise, there's an incalculable number of reasons that we can point to as to why people are unfaithful. And we're not going to go deep dive into them, because I would be doing you a disservice. But what I do want to do is give you a very general overview so that we can get through as many as possible. Now, as we do this, if you are the one who has violated the relationship, or if you're in a relationship and your spouse has violated it, and you're still trying to figure out, well, what was the reason and why did it happen? Maybe some of the things that we go to can point to those reasons. All right. So number one will be self-esteem and insecurity issues. This is a huge one. Low self-esteem oftentimes causes people to seek validation outside of their relationship. So either they're being validated by their spouse, and so they wonder, is it enough? Or they've stopped being validated, complimented by their spouse. Usually this happens in the beginning of a relationship. In the beginning, you will accommodate, you will admire, you will give admiration, affection, appreciation, all these A's. to your spouse. Once you get into a committed relationship, all of a sudden it tapers off. And so for a person who's struggling with self-esteem issues or insecurity, they often want to know, man, do I still have it? Am I still attractive? Am I still desirable? And so because they're no longer getting from their partner what they once did, they begin to step outside of the relationship and get that validation from someone else. That became the reason or the contributing factor to their betrayal. Number two, we see emotional needs. This is critically important because just as we have needs for survival, there are emotional needs within us, within a relationship, that if they're not met, it can lead to the demise of the relationship. So emotional needs are for the survival of the relationship. And so unmet emotional needs within this relationship can drive someone to really seek emotional support and connection somewhere else. And so once again, this need for attention and appreciation and emotional intimacy, it may be lacking in the relationship. And as a knee-jerk reaction in response to that, rather than working on talking through, trying to resolve it within the confines of the relationship, sometimes we feel, you know what, once the love is gone, it's gone. I might as well go and find it somewhere else. Or they become vulnerable to the attention, to the connection that someone else provides them, and they slip into that particular direction. Number three, sexual desires and preferences. This is big, because obviously most affairs wind up being sexually. And so differences in sexual desire do exist in a relationship. Oftentimes you have couples where they want different things, they have different sexual drives. A lot of times sexual boredom does set into a marriage, and people are looking for new experiences. They're looking for something that's exciting and fulfilling. There may be unfulfilled sexual fantasies or needs not addressed in a relationship. It's so interesting. Just last night, I was watching a documentary on Ashley Madison. And this is the place where married people went to meet up with other married people, knowing that, hey, you're married, I'm married, we have so much to lose. We're not going to let the cat out of the bag. So it was an arrangement that they made. And it talked about how many of them had all of these unmet sexual desires that either their spouse wasn't interested in, or maybe they had some deviant, as they would think, deviant desires that they never wanted to bring to the relationship. And so they were able to fulfill those in an affair. So sexual desires and preferences is really something that I think couples need to talk about, because it's one of the top 5 reasons people do cheat. Okay. The next one, personal crisis. This is huge, guys, because we all handle pressure and stress in a completely different way. And so whether we're talking about a midlife crisis or some, existential questioning of who am I and what am I here for? And, a lot of times when people are having a midlife crisis, they're seeking excitement and thrill and change. And oftentimes they experience that through an affair. Maybe they're dealing or coping with some personal issues of grief. When there's been a loss of life amongst family or a close friend, one of the ways that they deal with that grief is by seeking solace outside of their community, outside of their home. Maybe there's stress and pressure that they're facing on the job, and maybe they're not necessarily in a good place with their spouse, and they don't feel like they have someone that they can talk to, and so they find connection, companionship, they find support emotionally in someone else, which ultimately leads to an affair. Or maybe there's a major life change that's happening. We see that people who relocate, they move from one state to another. People who take on a new job. People who transition from being a household with a bunch of kids to now they're empty nesters. Whatever these major changes may be, retirement, the list goes on and on. Oftentimes during those seasons, there's a vulnerability that people experience and wind up engaging in behaviors that compromise the integrity of their relationship. I hope this is helping, guys. The next one would be mental health issues. This is a huge thing because conditions such as depression or anxiety or, personality disorders can impair judgment and will lead somebody into very risky behaviors. In addition to that, there are addictions that people struggle with, and addictions typically are in the mind. We know that the addiction is played out in the body, but most addictions and habits are in the mind. And so whether they're addictive issues, whether it be sex addiction, substance abuse, the list goes on, and that causes them to kind of slide into behaviors that would not be becoming of any type of spouse in a relationship. Here's another one. Here's another one. Entitlement. Entitlement, the sense of entitlement is huge. And some individuals may feel entitled to more than just what they're receiving in their relationship, right? So they justify their infidelity as their right. And so oftentimes they think too much of themselves. And so they put themselves on their own pedestal. Because I make money, and because I have power and influence, and because I have a certain position, or because I'm a such and such man, or whatever it is that makes them feel superior to the rest of the world. They feel like they're entitled to certain things, and so therefore they're going to get what they believe they deserve. Another challenge here, we're dealing with childhood trauma and past experiences. Now, this is huge because the things that we've gone through in our past significantly influence who we are. It shapes us, right? And so we can't ignore our past. And so oftentimes there are these unresolved issues from our childhood. Maybe it was abuse. Maybe it was neglect. Maybe it was some type of dysfunctional relational pattern. And so there's something that we call developmental lag, where a person is robbed of the natural developmental process that they should have gone through as a child. And so when they become an adult, they haven't matured in certain areas. So they revert back to childlike behaviors. And so entering into an affair where you can escape responsibility, you're free, you're escaping the world and the life that you're currently in, and you're whisking off into this very childlike, behavior with no responsibility. That's an indication of that, right? Someone who hasn't dealt with those past childhood traumas. And so previous experiences of infidelity in one's family, this is another thing. Like if I grew up in an environment where people cheated, mom cheated on dad or vice versa, or my uncles and my aunts or my brothers and sisters. In essence, I've been soaked and saturated into an environment where it was ever present. So either it was on Front Street and I saw it and was witness to it, or I always heard about, right? The conversations always loomed. When we talked about certain family members, it was, I didn't see it, but I knew it was going on. And so that began to shape my belief. It began to shape my behaviors. It began to shape my pathology. And so oftentimes, even though it's wrong behavior, it's become very normalized as just something that happens. And so because that's been your experience, we see how for many people, they slip into those same patterns because those are the patterns that they come from. Next, there's a fear, guys. There's a fear of intimacy. There's all types of fears that people struggle with, but this intimacy thing is a huge thing. And some individuals may have this deep-seated fear of emotional closeness with their partner. Now, this is the person you enter into a covenant relationship with, and they are there to meet most, if not all. Nobody can meet all of your needs, but they're certainly there to meet your emotional needs. But there's certain personality types, there's certain experiences that we've gone through where we build up a wall, and it creates a separation between us and our partner. And we may be physically in close proximity, but emotionally distant. Emotionally, we're as far apart as the East is from the West. And the closer that we get, the more uncomfortable it begins to feel. It's kind of like the windshield wiper marital pattern. Windshield wipers go from left to right. And so it looks like they're in unison, they're working together, they're clearing the rain from the front window. But what happens is, if you know it, there's a distance between them. When one moves to the right, the other one's backing up. The other one moves to the left, the other one's backing up. The only time one windshield wiper actually touches the other is when it's broken and then needs to be fixed. And so when it's fixed, there's this distance. Some couples thrive off of this disconnect, this distance, because anytime they become too close, like magnets, those magnets you try to put together, there's this distance. And so there's a fear there that hasn't been dealt with. And so oftentimes there's an avoidance of deep emotional connection due to vulnerabilities and past hurts that people have not gotten over. This stuff, I'm telling you guys, we're talking about the reasons why a person cheats. These are some of the personal factors, and we're just scratching the surface. What we want to do is go to one short video about the last chance weekend. We want you to see that, because if these are the issues that you're dealing with, this is the place, the sacred space, where we deal with it and bring healing and resolve and restoration to your life and to your relationship. So watch this quick commercial. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back. You're watching the Couples Academy show. I hope that you can see me okay. There seems to be some issues with the Wi-Fi. I'm in a different location, so hopefully you can see me. I see lots of questions in here, and I appreciate those questions. What I want to do is I want to get through quite a few more, and I promise that I will address those questions. I want you to tune in over the next couple of days, because I want to go deep dive and give you as much as I possibly can. The next one we want to deal with is the need for validation. Man, oh man, oh man, I can't tell you how big this is. Oftentimes there's a constant need for validation and approval from others. And oftentimes that can drive someone to seek affirmation outside of the relationship. If you're not someone who affirms, if you're not someone who compliments, if you're not someone who builds up and speaks life into, just generally, or maybe we're not in a good place and it seems like all I do is get criticism from you. All you do is complain about what I'm not and what I should be doing. It's just like at some point, I'm already struggling with how I see myself. And so I need to feel validated. I need to feel approved. And so I will seek that outside of the relationship. And you have to understand that even though overwhelmingly the majority of affairs end up in sex, that is not the main drive. It's not like I'm leaving my marriage to find sex. In those scenarios, we're talking about one-night stands. We're talking about prostitutes. I can pay somebody because I have a sexual drive and compulsion, and I'm looking for it. But generally speaking, that's not the drive. It's all these other things that we're talking about. And because there aren't boundaries and parameters, and you're not operating from a place of integrity, it is easy for things to transition into something sexual. But I was searching for validation, right? A desire to feel admired or desired, possibly from multiple people. Because, yeah, I know you're attracted to me, but knowing that many people are attracted to me may be a boost to my self-worth and self-esteem. And that's what I was seeking in this encounter. Here's another one, and I know many people, this is the big one, narcissistic behaviors. We are convinced that our spouse is a narcissist. Well, guess what, folks? Everybody has narcissistic tendencies, because when you read what narcissism is, there are so many attributes, behaviors, and characteristics that could be attached to any person. Now, of course, a person who's engaging in an affair definitely is leaning in that direction and may have more characteristics than the average person. So, individuals with these traits may cheat due to a sense of entitlement. There we go again, right? That entitlement thing. And a lack of empathy towards their partner. Because one thing about narcissists, they're more logical and mental than they are emotional. And they struggle with the ability to feel. So when it comes to compassion, when it comes to empathy, they're not strong in those particular areas, which can cause some of the problems. And so, likewise, a narcissist will also seek admiration and attention from others as a way to boost and feed their ego. We have another impulsivity and risk taking behavior. Okay. Now, there are certain people who are very mild mannered, they're very conservative, but you have others who have a propensity to, you know, to engage in what we would call impulsive decisions and risk taking behaviors. And oftentimes it leads to infidelity. These are thrill seekers and they're in search for excitement. And so oftentimes they may find themselves engaging in forbidden activities. We know this is true because think about people, and I'm not indicting all wealthy people or all very successful people, but there are some who have so much money, they've done so many things, they get bored with the pleasures that we're still seeking. And they're like, what's next? You know, if they've had multiple partners, it's just like, okay, well, what's next? I'm bored. I'm bored with heterosexual sex. Maybe I should try homosexual sex. I'm bored with vanilla sex. Maybe I should jump into kink. I've jumped out of planes. I've climbed mountains. What else can I do? So they're always searching for the next hit, the next high, the next thing that will make them feel alive again. Because in their relationship, it's boring, it's predictable, it's monotonous, and I'm searching for something more. And this is why affairs become very, very, very prevalent amongst people who have that need. The next thing is a lack of self-control. We've got to deal with that because difficulty in exercising self-control and resisting temptations, particularly when opportunities for cheating is present, is what causes people to do what they do. Like if I have poor impulse, or I should say poor impulse control due to various behavioral issues. If I struggle and I'm not really that disciplined when it comes to eating, I'm not disciplined when it comes to vices, I'm not disciplined when it comes to substances. Well, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so oftentimes I may struggle to have discipline when it comes to relationships and sexuality. And so my lack of self-control will drive me to do things that may not be healthy for me. I hope this is like, are you getting something out of this? Are you getting something out of this? Let's go to the next one. Sometimes a search for personal growth can contribute to an affair. And you're like, well, wait a minute, huh? How is that possible? Some individuals actually may cheat as a misguided attempt to find something inside of themselves that they were searching for. They're looking to explore new aspects of their identity. Maybe before they got married, they were a very social person. Now that they're married, it's just me and you, close knit. So they're longing for that social connection. Because they were that guy. They were that guy. They were that girl. And so the affair brings out a different part of their personality that was shut down, that was suppressed, that was lying dormant. Or maybe they're seeking to explore a version of themselves that they've never been. And the affair brings it out. You see? So this desire for new experiences and personal growth outside of the confines of their current relationship will cause them to do things that are compromising to the relationship. The next one, midlife crisis. This is a big one, folks. Midlife crisis. When you're experiencing a midlife crisis, it can lead to questioning of one's life choices, including the relationship. Like, I know I've been in this marriage for the last 30 years. Am I really with the right person? Do I want something new? I'm seeking excitement. I'm seeking novelty. It's an attempt to recapture youth or to feel more alive through the affair. Because I've reached my midlife. And guess what? What do I have ahead of me? And so you begin second guessing and questioning things. And that becomes the drive. The next one is sexual addiction or hypersexuality. Okay? Compulsive needs for sexual gratification that drives infidelity. I love sex. I love sex with my spouse, but I need more. I want more. I want different. I'm preoccupied. Regardless of the quality of it, regardless of whether it needs to be with someone in my primary relationship, my hypersexuality can be a psychological disorder that requires personal intervention because it's a compulsiveness that I have within me. And I'm in hot pursuit of what I think that I do not have. So it's a big one, folks. Sex is a big one. Then we have unmet personal goals and frustrations. See, we're dealing more with the personal side. What's going on inside of me? Like my own frustration with my own unachieved personal goals or a feeling of stagnation in my life can lead me to seek fulfilling behaviors and experiences elsewhere. And infidelity oftentimes is a way to compensate for my own personal disappointments or unmet ambitions. It's just like, man, like, how do we even draw these connections? Like, how is this even possible? But these are contributing factors. As you're hearing these, I hope you're writing these things down so that you can begin to, critically analyze what's going on in your home. Let's go to the next one. Now we're dealing with low relationship satisfaction, right? So even though this is a part of the relational factor, it's how it lands for me personally. And so my own general dissatisfaction with my relationship, not due to any specific conflict or issue, but overall my unhappiness leads me to seek fulfilling pleasures and contentment outside of the relationship. Then we have cognitive biases. Cognitive biases. Some of you have heard of these things, and some of you are like, what's that? So, this is where we were talking about the mindset of a person, where the rationalizing or justifying infidelity due to conflicting beliefs and attitudes, that's the drive. And so, using cognitive dissonance to alleviate your guilt or to justify your cheating behavior as acceptable under certain circumstances. See, this is what happens. And so I can't wait to get into the mind of a cheater, because once we have that conversation, you're going to be like, oh my God, I did not realize how deep this was. And it's deep, folks. I'm going to hit one more for the sake of time. Okay. So obviously hormonal influences is a big indicator. Biological factors such as hormonal changes or imbalances, it could influence sexual desire and behavior. And the impact of these hormones on your mood, on your attraction, on your sex drive can shift some things within you, which ultimately shifts things in the relationship. Now, listen, guys, listen. If you're watching right now, please, 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 I see your questions. I promise you, if you tune in tomorrow, I'm going to answer your questions. I just wanted to get through half of the list. We're going to do part 2 to this conversation. I cheated on you because of me. I want you to dial in. I want you to tune in. I want you to sit down with your partner, watch these, and we're going to come back and answer some of your questions on tomorrow. I hope that you're getting something out of this. I believe that this can be transformational if you take this series seriously. Listen, reach out to us. We would love the opportunity of working with you, whether one-on-one through virtual counseling, whether a last chance weekend that we have coming up, or maybe even a private marriage intensive. This is what we're here to do. We need you to heal. We need you to move forward. We need you to experience a level of breakthrough in your life and your relationship. So you're watching the Couples Academy show. I'll see you in the morning at 9:30 for our next episode.